Hi, what's up? We're in the next part. Please go check out the previous part to gauge your bearings. Really, I beg you. In the previous part, I was speaking about martyrdom and how it is that it's, of course, a theme in the scriptures about tribulation saints. But I am trying to encourage those tribulation saints because much of my content is only going to get washed after the rapture has happened. To survive suicide, okay? Because I have spent the past more than 7 years, so you will be without excuse if you kill yourself in the tribulation, hoping to go to heaven. And besides, I don't even think that you will have to survive all of the tribulation to get taken up to heaven, because I do believe that there is a mid-trib rapture as well as a post-trib. I've spoken about that. The post-trib rapture is found in Matthew 24 at the end, and the mid-trib rapture is found in Revelation 11 to 12. Right? You can either look at it in the view of the two witnesses getting caught up, and so therefore likely the rest of the church will go, or that scene with the Revelation 12 sign, where the woman goes into the wilderness and the baby's caught up to the heavens. There is a pre-trib rapture where those who believe fervently upon the Lord now, the 5 virgins, are going to go. Us, right? So you don't even have to wait as much time as I did. Like, I am a grace to help the tribulation church who will watch my content to survive hardship of the earth. Of course, my situation does not compare to what under heaven it is that the tribulation is going to be like. Not only are you going to be having some pretty hard knock cognitive dissonance and shock from people who you are supposed to love and who are supposed to love you, treating you like trash. That's going to be the first thing. But the world is just going to be falling apart. Like, there's going to be plagues falling from the sky. There's going to be monsters roaming the streets. There's going to be zombies. They proper are going to be zombies. That's another story for another day. I will probably speak on that some other time. There's going to be there are going to be a lot of, there's going to be severe famine, hunger. Goodness, to like die from hunger pangs is quite expensive, I would imagine, in comparison to just getting shot in the head. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it would be easier, rather than like watching yourself waste away with malnourishment, all of your bones caving into your chest and every cavity of your body. Rather than watch yourself do that, you'd much rather likely, just kind of, grab a noose and end yourself because you've said the sinner's prayer. I'm trying to help Christians get to the 3.5 year mark. Just before the mark of the beast gets taken, there will be a rapture. And then the harvest that's going to be around, thanks to the witness of the 2 witnesses. Those will be the guys that are going to get lamb-basted by the massacring, beheading thing. And then there's going to be the collection of the saints that are still alive from the 4 corners of the earth at the end, right? So you only have 3.5 years in each cycle to basically survive. But I do understand the intensity of your sorrow will likely be grander, far beyond what I could have ever experienced, right? So therefore, I guess maybe the reason why mine is stretched out all these years, my suffering, even though it's somewhat of a foreshadowing of what's to come, is because mine is mild in comparison. I mean, my life's conditions are horrible. My situation is incredibly tough. It's rough. It's embarrassing, okay? It's embarrassingly abusive. Yet, I have a bed to lay. I have internet. That's why I can even communicate this stuff. I have food to eat. I'm not emaciated. I have got face products that I can buy to experiment with anti-aging treatments. I can buy retinol, vitamin C. Do you understand? I've got beautiful food on my plate every day. When I'm complaining because my linseed has run out. My moringa has run out. I'm not complaining that food has run out. So my situation is frankly a pin drop in the ocean, minuscule, just a prick, as opposed to a stab, in comparison to what you will go through in the tribulation. But on this side of the rapture, it is exorbitantly rough, and nobody can even fathom how I have survived so long. So you're about to enter into a much worse time, but you will not have suicide for an excuse, because I will have made it. Suicide is always such a hard topic for me to talk about, because there are people who, because they have lost loved ones to it, want to somehow explain all that which they were going through away, or as a way to somehow place them in heaven, and I frankly don't believe they are there. Okay, first and foremost, South Africa, alright, has been predictively programmed by Hollywood to be an experimentation hub, the first one in Africa to unleash some kind of an experiment, a social experiment. And the show Resident Evil evidences that. The most recent Resident Evil that has been done on Netflix as a series, not so much a movie. Go check it out on Netflix. There's a show called Resident Evil, not the one with Mila Jovovich, a newer version with a younger girl. She's African American. Okay, in that show, they are based in Cape Town, South Africa, and the Umbrella Corporation operates from out of there. I found it strange that they chose South Africa as opposed to somewhere in the US. And when then I experienced everything that I'm experiencing, or rather, by the time I saw that Resident Evil and I was experiencing what I was experiencing, I was like, the scriptures are right when they say the hearing ear and the seeing eye both are from the Lord. Because I'm so awake in Christ, these things fall into my lap in so an obvious way of mapping back to the realities that we're in. I no longer struggle with unraveling puzzles, guys. I no longer struggle to figure things out, to go, I wonder. Nothing that happens anymore do I need to decipher and have an aha moment. I am so, suffering, persecution has refined my spiritual senses so much that I immediately spot things that I look around and I imagine people should see this. It's like being the only one to hear an explosion go off in a packed town, a packed city square, and it goes boom, boom. And you're the only one that is alarmed. You're the only one that twitches, glitches. You're the one that gets down on the ground while everybody is busy just walking around as normal. I guess that's what it means to be unplugged out of the matrix. These things are so obvious to me, and I feel like more people should see it for what it is, but they don't. South Africa is obviously handpicked from out of all of Africa to be the first immoral ground of breaking out some kind of, a social experiment, hopefully infiltrating the rest of Africa. We are ground zero in Africa. We are the tantamount in Resident Evil of Raccoon City. And that was predictively programmed into the show The Resident Evil, the second version, volume 2. And it's on Netflix. Go check it out. It's in Cape Town, South Africa. Lo and behold, them confessing that was already evident in my life. It was already evident in my life. I don't know when the experiment commenced, but it is already evident in my life. I see it everywhere. I see that South Africa is the first place to go out of all of Africa. I see it. Not only in my life, but in decisions, goodness gracious, during, what do you call a group of lions? Thank you. Month. I feel like I can use the word Pride Month. Okay, but maybe not the two of them together. Just the word Pride. Anyway, during, what do you call a lion? A pack of lions, a pride. During that month, okay, South Africa. Two companies that I know of. Vodacom, a telecommunications service provider, and a bank, Capitec, changed their logo to the colorful agenda. Yeah, thank you. To basically stand with Collective of Lions Month. Okay? And for me, it was like, this is South Africa. We've got some pretty bad issues with gender-based violence. You could have done something like that. And the same month that is the American Colorful Month in our country is Youth Month. It's the month for young people. June 16 is the Soweto Uprising Day that basically marks a time in history where the youth in the country were fighting for better education because Bantu education was a bummer. Okay? And a young man by the name of Hector Peterson died. There's a whole memorial of his in Soweto somewhere. Where is it? Go Dube. Ay, angazi somewhere. Dube, yeah. Eko Dube. Is it Dube? Ay, angazi man. Somewhere go Soweto. Not far from Killer Road. Okay, very well. So Hector Youth Day is we commemorated around that particular event in history. It's South African history. It's our culture and it is our heritage and it is our historical moment where we ought, light candles and have a moment of silence. The Vodacom as well as a Capitec, and I don't know who else followed suit, but I know definitely these two companies did that. They could have, changed their brand logos to the face of Hector Peterson or school shoes or books for children or, a little graduation hat logo to say Happy Youth Month or whatever. Instead, they decided to stand with a colorful agenda, an American ideology, an American holiday, frankly, and they have made it ours. They made their logo that, and they completely ignored the theme of Youth Month. They completely ignored Youth Month, something we've been celebrating ever since I was a youth. And they ignored Youth Month in favor of this colorful agenda, right? And you think that South Africa's not Raccoon City. Like I said, among the first African countries to fully embrace woke ideology. Fully embrace it. To a point of ignoring their own cultural heritage in favor of a woke rubbish. If you think that South Africa is an enemy of America, which it currently is acting like it is, you are duping yourself, because if South Africa was really truly standing with China and Russia, so you can see how this is all just mapping together well, then what alliances they claim to have actually aren't really alliances, or what enmities they apparently all have with one another are actually not enmities, like they're enemies in public but they shake hands in the background, is in the fact that South Africa is busy pushing colorful month in brand logos of massive corporations in the country, while ignoring our own cultural heritage, while also claiming that they're anti-USA, while also entering into an agreement with China and Russia, I guess, BRICS, basically, to, tarry away from the world's reserve currency, that is, the dollar, trying to create their own currency, they are breaking away. They have irritated the fight that was had between America and South Africa when that senator or whatever in the United States of America accused South Africa of providing weapons to Russia. All the parties in this country, including Julius Malema's EFF, went on a rampage, basically complaining that, hey, America, you are disrespectful. How dare you accuse us of colluding with Russia against the Ukraine? So on paper, on the forefront, it looks as if though South Africa is starting to break away from the USA. But here it is that South Africa is strangely embracing this colorful ideology to a point of ignoring their own cultural heritage in favor of this. This funny little collection of Lions Month is also what is this, the main sort of kind of idea or agenda, in that not so much COP28 that's coming up, but the resolutions of the United Nations also, as they are mixed together with the World Economic Forum to push this agenda, the climate conference, blah blah, that's coming, whatever. They are trying, what does that even have to do with anything? They are trying to infiltrate this particular agenda, just like any kind of rebellion. They are pushing it more than they pushed black rights, more than they pushed women's rights, more than they pushed any other, movement in history. It's eerie, it's weird. Pushing black rights was a plan of God. Pushing women's rights, in very many respects, was also a plan of God. But this is obviously so anti-God that when they push it more than anything else that they've ever pushed, they're obviously trying to push a satanic ideology. Create as much calamity, societal degradation as possible, that we might create so much disorder on the earth so that we can be perfectly able to come and rescue it all when everything falls apart, when things brim over the folds. Let's annoy everyone so much and so fast that there will be so much calamity, so many wars on the ground, with people fighting because they feel so bombarded by this colorful agenda that ultimately when they scratch each other's eyeballs out, we'll be the ones to rock up and just kind of save the day. They are creating a Hegelian dialectic model. They are creating a chaos so that they can come in and bring order. And South Africa is acting as if though it is an enemy of the USA currently. Whereas here it is that it is busy standing for this global agenda and wokeism, which we all know is the infant of America. And it has been introduced into a school as a naughty boy that does not respect teachers. And he influences all the other kids to disrespect the teachers. How do you embrace American ideology so warmly to a point of scooting aside your own youth day, your own youth month, and then claim to be an enemy of America? How? It's it just did not make sense to me. But like I said, these things are obvious to me in a way that is very stark, yet nobody is ducking. Nobody else in my ecosystem is ducking. And I just I don't understand why South Africans are not creasing their foreheads wondering what in the world is going on. A country that is struggling to keep its lights on is busy proliferating a colorful agenda. It's busy converting its bank logos into rainbow colors when we can't even switch the lights on. Whatever happened to serving the needs of the people on the ground as they are immediate to us? It's like South Africa is the first experimental hub ground for the Hegelian dialectic. Let's calamitize South Africa first out of all of Africa, and when it successfully has fallen apart and been indoctrinated, it will be our loop, our tunnel into Africa, because the rest of Africa is just hella stubborn to bend. But if we can get to South Africa, we will get to the rest of Africa. South Africa is the first domino that we are tipping, and that show Resident Evil, where the Umbrella Corporation's headquarters were in South Africa, Cape Town, was a big fat chunky sign that something was coming to South Africa. I already knew at the time because I was suffering, but the the extremity of sorrow that ultimately happened over and above the existing situation pretty much came after that time. After that show was released on Netflix, you can even check when it first launched on Netflix, okay? That was when we started getting things like stage 6, 7 load shedding in the country. That is when we started getting multiple power cuts a day, taking away about 10 hours of power in a day. And there seems to be no solution and no end in sight. It's like our economy is being picked away brick by brick. That is also when the announcement was made that we have been graylisted. Not when, afterwards, we got graylisted as a country. After that show on Netflix went aired, we also, but this also happened around COVID, around the disease, right? The economic state of the country fluctuated to a point where ratings agencies started to junk status the nation economically. And we just have not recovered ever since then. We have not recovered. There then were those lootings in KZN. Guys, even the calamities that the Lord has poured out on South Africa are precisely because our wickedness has only ever intensified. We've gotten more evil. South Africa, we are blessed with good weather in the sense that if we have snow, really, mostly it's in Cape Town, but our weather is never so bad. Hardly ever will you ever hear of South Africans passing away from a weather event. Like too much flooding, too much snow, too much whatever. We tend to just kind of be somewhere in the middle. Even our winters are not that cold. Our summers are not that hot in comparison to the rest of Africa, albeit us being in Africa. We don't have extreme weather, and we also don't have natural disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. We don't have any such thing. There was a day here. Okay, first of all, there was that those incredible floods in KZN that caused an entire bridge to collapse. The floods recently go Cape Town, right, that have been happening, that were doing the rounds on television. They then were they okay, so with floods, it's like, okay, fine, it's always rained. Again, Soweto, there by Killer Road, go south, like near lands and whatnot. There were again floods that consumed people's homes whole. Stuff like that barely ever happens in South Africa, and it started happening just the past year, 2 years alone. After that show was released, that was a judgment from God because evil had increased in the land. All right, now, okay, fine. So we've always gotten some, rain issues every so often. Yeah, okay, flood causing a bridge to collapse. Maybe we can just say it's, what do they call this thing? C squared, the one that's worship of Mother Nature. Okay, you go figure out what C squared stands for. Maybe it's C squared. But guys, if there's anything that we don't experience in this country, it's earthquakes. Maybe an earth tremor because there was something that happened in another country and it's an aftershock that comes to South Africa and makes us vibrate like jelly on a plate, and then we find ourselves standing again. Never have we ever gotten buildings collapse and people die because of an earthquake in this country. I don't sleep until after 2 a.m. I spoke about that in one of my other series because of the fact that I'm always praying. And if I try to sleep at any time before midnight, I get woken up, ranged out of sleep by demonic attack. So I don't even bother. My routine, my schedule is such that I only go to bed after 2 a.m. So I was still awake watching Netflix. I was watching, I believe, Blacklist. And guys, right here as I'm awake, my whole family is asleep. The neighborhood pretty much is asleep. I feel underneath my bed like Yazzie, I switched off Netflix. It lasted something like 10 seconds. Longest little aftershock or whatever, or movement of the earth that there was when I was working at MTN. It happened during the day one time, but it literally lasted like a second or two. It was like the building went for 2 seconds and it stopped. That's all that we've ever experienced in South Africa. But for an earthquake, like it was a proper earthquake that lingered for a good 10 to 15 seconds. I had enough time while the earth was shaking to hop out of bed, go outside to see if I'm not seeing things. I was half waiting for my cat to wake up, but it was not so violent that my cat would be woken up. It stayed sleeping, so I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was feeling it by myself. I heard nobody crying or screaming outside or being like, "Hey badna, hey batung, wa, yera, wat gaan?" Nothing. So I thought I was the only one. I was like, Lord, am I losing my mind? Lord, really? I mean, I know I've been suffering a lot, and sometimes suffering can cause a person to lose their minds. Is my brain leaving me? Am I feeling things? Am I hallucinating? Is this a demonic attack on just me? And something told me as I'm busy asking the Lord if I'm losing my mind, because I thought I felt it by myself. Like, I'm so desirous for the rapture and for the Lord to return that when I feel a natural disaster happening that has never happened in my particular existence, in my particular country ever, I self-fulfilling prophecy and a confirmation bias can make a person feel stuff. It's like having a phantom illness. Hey, you tell yourself you've got a headache long enough until you get it. Yeah, I thought maybe I was having a phantom, what do they call it? Birth pains. Earthquakes in various places, wars and rumors of wars. I imagine that because I so desire for the rapture to happen, that I'm busy fulfilling Bible prophecy in my own brain. I thought it was a phantom earthquake that I felt just by myself. But something told me, Google. Go and find out on the internet if at all, there is a seismology department in this country or in this world that, immediately reports Earth's ramblings and grumblings immediately. And lo and behold, right there, a good perhaps like 15 minutes after that event happened, it was immediately on the internet. So I guess it was automated. It's an automated system that just releases this data, right? It's likely global. I don't think it's South Africa, but if it is South African, then whatever. It released seismic activity. I said, why is there an earthquake near my area? Now my computer sort of knows my location. Yeah, and indeed, I saw one of a magnitude 5.5. That is huge for South Africa. It's massive. In Boksburg. In Boksburg. You will, like, if, guys, you know there was an earthquake in Boksburg, it made the news. I felt it. It made the news. It was on ENCA. If you're not living in South Africa, just Google earthquake in Boksburg. Boksburg is spelled Boksburg. Poor Boksburg. That's the same place where that horrible explosion near the gas tanker happened last year in December. They just keep on, getting it. Yeah, there was an earthquake of a 5.5 magnitude in Boksburg, and it was so cataclysmic that it brought down one complex in, I believe, Benoni or whatever. The whole unit, like an individual unit of complexes, caved in. They fell on people. The structures are collapsed. The residents got displaced. I believe there were some deaths even recorded. I don't know how many though. We've never had the kind of earthquake in this country that would cause a building to collapse. We only get little shakes because I guess the earth is burping or whatever. But we don't ever get the kinds of earthquakes that bring buildings down. So basically history was made. History was made by that earthquake in Boksburg. And just to explain to you how far Boksburg is, I told you guys that Boksburg is spelled Boksburg. So if you're not living in this country, you can Google it and you will find it on any news channel in South Africa. Boksburg, South Africa earthquake. What month are we in now? June. Yes, it happened earlier this June. So go Google it. Or maybe, definitely was not May. It was June. It happened this month. It made the news. And when I saw it on the news, I was like, that was another confirmation that I was not feeling it. That I was not creating a phantom illness in my body, that I didn't have a self-fulfilling prophecy so desperate for the longing of Bible prophecy to be fulfilled that I would feel an earthquake when there is none. Boksburg, just to explain to you how far it is from where I stay. It's I am in the west rand of Johannesburg, in Rediput, a town called Wilgehevel. Boksburg is in the east rand of Johannesburg, so opposite side of the cardinal map. Johannesburg is a province. A province would be the tantamount of a state. So if you take any state in the US, and I use the US as a barometer because everybody knows American states, take, I don't know how, the size of Johannesburg, what it can be compared to an American state, but you guys can Google it. Really, just go on Google and say what state is Johannesburg, South Africa, as big as. Not Johannesburg, guys. Gauteng. Gauteng is a province, sorry. Johannesburg is a city, so it would be like New York City. You know how New York is a state, but it also is a city? So Johannesburg is a city. Gauteng is a province, which is the equivalent or the tantamount of a state. So Boksburg is on the east rand of the state of Gauteng, of Johannesburg, while Wilgehevel, where I'm at, is the west rand. So it's literally opposite. It's the east and west. So grab a similar sized state to Gauteng, South Africa, and then measure the kilometerage or the mileage, all right, of how many kilometers it is from the east of one state to the far west of one state, and gauge therefore how far Boksburg is to where I'm at. Yet I felt it. It's the opposite side on the cardinal map. I'm on the west, they're on the east, and the far extreme Nogal. So I am basically the farthest away in Gauteng from where that earthquake happened. I'm the farthest away. Maybe those who would be even farther away would be those who are far west, like almost entering into the next province, which is the northwest. But I am as good as far away gets. I'm as good as far away gets from that place, and I felt it all. So basically, that earthquake, I would imagine, was felt by all of Johannesburg. It was felt by all of Gauteng. There were people in Pretoria talking about it, but it was the epicenter of it was in Boksburg. That kind of earthquake, never heard of in this country. We don't have issues with weather like that. We don't have issues with nature like that, with climate like that. Yet it happened. So why in the world would the Lord hook up that kind of magnitude earthquake in a country that does not know such a thing? It's because of the intensification of sin in South Africa as a result of them signing a deal with the devil and acting as if though they don't know what's going on. They are pretending like they are at enmity with the US, first of all, or with certain countries in the world, when it's very clear that they are allied with each other and And this wickedness has angered the Lord, and it has created an earthquake in a diverse place, in Boxburg. And on the earth, distress of nations, the sea and the waves roaring. We are Raccoon City, we are ground zero. Do you understand? In Africa. It's gonna shuba here in South Africa in terms of moral degradation and moral turpitude. It's very hard for immorality to thrive in a society with a corrupt, not so much a corrupt government, but where there is not a strong or an established government. Many parts of Africa are poor. They still have so many issues that they don't have time to be with the luxury of embracing multiple pronouns, for instance, when it comes to the genders. There's just no luxury. When you've got kwashiorkor and scurvy here, when you've got rubella there, when you have got, what do you call this thing? When you have got malnourishment everywhere. When you have got HIV thriving there, here, and everywhere. When you've got hunger. When you have got gangs that are terrorizing entire villages with no law and order being enforced. When you've got civil war all over the show, you really don't have time to be calling people they, them. You don't have time to be calling people even cat or animal or dog. There's no room for that level of moral degeneracy in other parts of Africa because they're going through so much rubbish. So in a much freer society with a better constitution, with less civil war, a lot more peace, which South Africa is, that is a breeding ground for Raccoon City. It is a breeding ground to experiment on them because these people are not nonchalant to suggestion because of their sorrow, because of everything else that they're going through, because they have to live in a hay house that every so often when it rains gets blown away by the currents. Such a person does not have time to have gender reaffirming surgery or even gender dysphoria, for crying out loud. Like, you don't even have time to notice that you've got an effeminate way about you as a boy when your mom's house is facing collapse because of rain. But when you are in South Africa where everything is relatively hunky-dory, then you will complain about silly things like, why in the world are you not calling me a girl when I'm a girl, even though I was born a boy? Why in the world are you not respecting my pronouns? Why in the world are you that? Yeah, South Africa is woke because it can afford to. And the citizens of South Africa complain about a lack of electricity, but they don't complain about a lack of clean water. They also do not complain about hunger, thirst, malnourishment, like just disease thriving with nobody coming for anybody. South Africa is not so socioeconomically devastated and barren, with a socio-political and geopolitical climate that is so devastated that they cannot afford to basically focus on non-essentials. So all these non-essential doctrines that are being shoved down the throat of nations that have got relatively free constitutions and better societal circumstances, they are used as that which to usher in immorality in their neighboring countries. Guys, yes, there's so much going on. South Africa's Raccoon City. I also watched a video on YouTube recently. It was shared by this one guy who does Christian content by the name of Ricky on Church Reality Check. It was of I don't know if it's a parent or a teacher or an official of government. Or a government official. But this woman was basically complaining against some proposed law in the country that is gunning for our children. Our children. Isn't America the place where kids are being targeted for all different kinds of indoctrination? Well, Raccoon City, number 2, South Africa, that's where we're at. This law is an education bill, as if though we don't have power cuts to deal with. An education bill where, wait for it guys, they want to teach children without the consent of parents. Not sex education. This woman made it clear that this is not sex education. But they want to indoctrinate, they want to train kids how to masturbate from as young as 5 years old. They also want to force children to learn about the colorful agenda, the woke agenda, absent of their parental consent. They also want to deny children access to schooling if they are not VACCINATED. You cannot enter a child into a school unless they have taken that thing. It's a proposed bill. They also want to, there was another bizarre law that they want to introduce in this regard. The curriculum that is teaching children that there is this colorful agenda, basically a whole bunch of sexuality in the school system. They also want to shove it down the throats of homeschooling parents. Like, America got it better than us. They are saying that even when you homeschool, you have to abide by these laws or your child's education won't be recognized. So if your kid does not have this in their curriculum, they cannot matriculate. They cannot be recognized as moving on to the next grade and the next grade and the next grade, meaning that they are basically blocking higher learning for any child. So all these kids have got to be infected by the injection just to be scholars in South Africa. And they also have got to learn woke ideology, or else they can phrase that. Yes, they also want to allow abortions, termination of pregnancies for children from the age as early as the age of 12 without them consenting. And they can get this done through the education system. What does that have to do with even the education? Never mind medical system. Never mind hospitals and doctors. This is a education law. So you can basically ask for an abortion at your high school, at your primary school. If you're 12 years old, that would be primary. They have introduced this into law. It's a proposed bill that still has to have some kind of road shows and whatnot for South Africans to approve or lack thereof. And this time around, it is a prescription, whereas before it was a suggestion. Parents initially apparently stood against such a recommendation 5 years ago. Now they're trying again, and this time they're doubling down. And they're saying that it is not only for government schools, but private schools as well as home schools. So if you are in South Africa, you can forget about your children escaping this ideology. As a Christian parent, your child is basically being told, unless they get the injection and unless they get trained woke ideology, they cannot move from grade 1 to 2 to 3 to basically 12. They can't go to university. They cannot get educated in this country if they don't abide by these laws. What? Like what, right? This is shocking, right? Yeah, no, it's a whole proposed bill in this country. In Africa. Imagine that. Africa. It's a whole proposed bill. And it came this year in 2023. Go Google it, please. I implore you. And this woman was saying, guys, we have to stand. They're coming for our children. I would not want my 12-year-old kid being able to get an abortion from the age of 12 without me knowing about it. And I also do not want my 5-year-old child being taught how to masturbate. What does that have to do with education? What? Nobody knows. And yet South Africa claims to be an enemy of America and a friend of China and Russia. This would never pass in China, ever. The Chinese, one thing that they got down is the morality of their own citizens, even though they want the whole world immoral. This would never fly in China. And yes, South Africa is claiming to be at enmity with America. No, South Africa is proliferating the agenda of the globalists. Even though they're currently claiming that they are part of that which is going to take away the power of the US, what they rather are part of is that they're just an experimental hub of Africa. Guys, these things that are happening are just shocking, like out of this world. And you can't even escape it as a homeschooling parent. So as a Christian, where do you go? Unless you move your kid out of state, out of the country, you can forget about raising your kid in the admonition of the Lord in South Africa. One comment in that video on YouTube was, I'm so grateful I kept my children in Lesotho, because then they don't have to be subjugated to the tyranny of the South African rubbish nonsense. Well, Lesotho is a neighboring country. If anything, it's not even neighboring. It's right inside South Africa. Like, Lesotho used to be part of South Africa. It's in the center of South Africa, but it has its own sovereignty. So, I mean, Lesotho is probably going to be the first to get cooed then, followed by Botswana, and then they're going to go into Zimbabwe, like just these neighboring countries in Southern Africa, and then it's going to go to the rest of Africa. So you who are priding yourself in the fact that at least your kids are in Lesotho is like the epiglottis inside the mouth of South Africa. When South Africa swallows, Lesotho is eventually going to go down the throat. It's what you must understand. Yo, guys, this happened this year in 2023. All these other things that I have highlighted to you started happening some time ago. There are so many other things that have been happening in South Africa that caught us off, like all of us, by shock, Mara. People think it's just normal. Like the whole polygamist ideal, with shows like Scandal and Rhythm City all of a sudden introducing polygamous marriages, forcing women in a country that has got a very bad case of gender-based violence. They're trying to force women to embrace polygamy, abuse, just infidelity from men. It's just a chaos, like moral turpitude that is being injected into the nation, and our president is embracing it. The polygamist ideology was first introduced through a president that was a polygamist, Jacob Zuma, and it's just been downhill from there. So it is no wonder, therefore, that men feel so entitled to me in this country. This is Bosnia. This is what do you call this? Kigali, Rwanda, in the center of the Rwandan genocide. And I just so happen to be a Tutsi, while the Houthis are massacring anyone that does not stand for their agenda. South Africa is a war zone, a spiritual cesspool, and the only people that are of sober mind are being thrown away like their toilet paper that you have used to wipe your behind after defecating. All that's left to do with it is to flush it. All I am is stained or soiled toilet paper in a toilet, and people are waiting to flush me, and my whole country is just standing back watching on some whoops. How in the world have they succeeded to do this? All the witchcraft on the ground, all the sorcery on the ground in this country that is being left to brew has made a demonic climate sufficient enough to lull to sleep, kind of hypnotize, daze South Africans, that all these stealthy, these pernicious infiltrations into the nation will be received with, what is this? But in a dizzy spell. And so ultimately you just have this nation that looks nothing like what it looked like just 5 years ago, just 10 years ago. And you are in it and you're like, whoops, how did things get here? We are Raccoon City in Africa. Raccoon City. Do you understand? Polygamy, gender-based violence, corruption of presidents, what is this? Sweeping under the carpet, all different kinds of corruption of our politicians, corruption of which is proven caught on camera, exculpatory, and yet they get away with it because of some majority rule in a parliament that is majority ANC. Like, I just like, whoa, like the money in the couch, yes, Cyril Ramaphosa, that gets to me. That gets to me. How the dude could not even face indictment, and yet here it is that they went and they indicted Donald Trump in the US. Like, guys, South Africa is a nation in free fall, and its president is happy to let it be in free fall because he has signed some nefarious deal to allow his country to be calamitized, that he might be given a nefarious version or a diabolical version of a ticket into their Noah's Ark. He's got shielding or protection from the calamity that will ultimately fall on the country when it falls, because in order to get a globalist government in operation, countries gotta fall. And well, I mean, South Africa, help us and we'll help you, President, because really we need to handle these people. We are Raccoon City. I'm going to tie in how this moves into the whole suicide thing, because they're trying to kill off anyone that doesn't stand with them because they don't want it to be obvious by murdering them. Next part.